Hello everyone, welcome to Agilistes, the podcast about agile methodologies where we share our conversations and insights about the methods, the techniques and the tools. I'm Julien Terret and as usual I'm joined by Pierre Ferré-Ferrand. How's it going, Pierre?
Going really, really well. We've got a special guest today, so another podcast that I will enjoy re-listening to. How are you doing, Julien?
All good on my side, and very excited to produce our first episode actually in English. To welcome Lydia Demchenko, who's a Scrum Master and who's gonna talk to us about like how to bring change in a company in general. For the little backstory, I've met Lydia at an Agile meetup recently, and we kind of got to talk about that sometimes it's not so easy to show the light, and that depending on the context, depending on the company, depending on the size, depending on the culture, and so on, you probably want to attack the problem from a different angle and also aim at a different scope. So we're gonna talk about a whole lot of things in this podcast. But first of all, Lydia, I'll let you introduce yourself. Tell us about you. What's your story?
Hi, yes, my name is Lydia Demchenko and I'm actually from Ukraine and I'm based in Portugal. I've been a Scrum Master for around 2 years and I have 5 years in management experience. I actually started off as a facilitator, funny enough. And going from experiential education background, like facilitating programs, into IT was actually not that much of a change. When we did a lot of tools as do, review and do again. So just like this simple tools that we used in experiential learning, they're actually like Scrum. I just didn't know that they were called Scrum. So that was my transition from facilitator to a Scrum Master.
Oh wow! So yeah, you had the culture of iteration already, so it all made sense. It's interesting. We discuss about that quite often with Pierre, like how what we call Scrum or Agile methodologies, actually, if you abstract enough, you can apply it, or you can see this pattern everywhere, or in a lot of spaces. So today we're gonna have probably a quite chunky episode. We're gonna talk about the how to understand the needs depending on the context of the company, the evidence-based approach. We're gonna talk about communities of practice, how to deal with the rejection when you get into a company, you try to implement some changes. How do you deal with that, and how to deal with changes in general, and how to achieve these organizational changes. And finally, Lydia is going to propose, as usual, a few tools that she likes and that she wants to share with the rest of the world.
I think with one or two words being slightly different, that's exactly the unit I had back in school when I was doing my engineering degree, around how to handle change. That was literally how the whole unit was named. Yeah.
Yeah, and I realized recently that it's not something that everyone learns at school. It explains a lot of things because it's easy to just think, okay, I have a brilliant idea, let's do this. And then you don't understand why no one's using it, or why it's not picking up, or why people are frustrated or mad at you or at the process. It's interesting. So as usual, just the fact that you know that it exists, at least you be mindful of it, and end up reading the same books every time that I have to go through it because I can't learn by heart. But at least you know that it exists. Cool. So Lydia, tell us. So let's talk about understanding the needs. I guess we can start by that. So you arrive in a company. How do you do?
That's interesting. First, I kind of think that it's important to understand the context of the company. Is this a big company? Is this a small company? For example, I have experience now. I'm working for a startup. And that's a completely different environment than working to a well-established company with thousands of employees. All the processes are already set in stone, and changing anything in that kind of company takes forever. And when I was reflecting on this experiences working for like two companies. One is a startup, another is well-established company. I was thinking about 4 key value areas from evidence-based approach. So what are these areas is time to market, ability to innovate, current value, and unrealized value. This might sound like a big terms for someone who's not very familiar with evidence-based approach, but they're quite easy to understand. So in this big company, the current value is high, but unrealized value, what is the potential of this company, is quite low because they already have customers that love them. And so the change is very slow because the clients are not as demanding as in a startup where the current value, I would say, it's like MVP, and you have a lot of potential, a lot of unrealized value, and the clients are demanding. And that's why I think this kind of companies have fast experiments and fast change. So in evidence-based approach, you have like a hypothesis, one idea, how can I make the progress? And then you experiment and measure how did I achieve this experiment or not. You expect and adapt. So it's like this experiment loop, and it's really fast. So for example, in a startup, just one of the experiments we've recently had is about frequent releases. I think it's one of the most painful points in Scrum is release frequently. And our clients, they, for example, come to us and they say, I want a web view of this application that now we have to download. So they don't want to download an application, they want to have it in a web view. And all our priorities just shift, and we start, this becomes like a high priority on the backlog, and we do everything like in frequent releases. What can we do as MVP for this? And I love how this culture like of experiment and fast change is in startups. But in well-established companies, the change was very slow. It had a lot of benefits because you know exactly how to do things because the process is established. You know who to go to, what is the structure. Any tools you need, you will get funding for it because, you know, it's a big organization. But at the same time, when we were working on changing Jira flow for 18 teams to standardize it, it took us a year. So a team of like 10 Scrum Master, engineering manager, and a couple of more representatives from team would gather every other week to talk about Jira workflow. To me, when I joined the company and I was invited to this meeting, by that time they already have talked about Jira workflow for a year. And I arrived and it seemed like it's still the beginning of the conversation because there is no agreement on what Jira workflow for 18 teams should look like. So to me, it was really surprising just being there and seeing how slow it is, and the meetings are not productive because there is no conclusion, there is no action point. And this is something that like these big companies lack. I feel after each meeting there is no action point, no what's next. But in a startup, I feel like because it's so fast paced, you just like next action point, and that's something that I think that has to do with current value and unrealized value of the companies. Pierre and Julien, have you had any experience similar to this?
Yes, I would say, of course, because obviously, unless people are being showed the right way, or actually you prove to them that there is a better way to do it, they will not do it. And one thing I literally was doing a retro with my team, that was last week, and at the end I purposefully omitted to go through the action to see if someone would notice, and I was delighted to see that all of my engineers jumped on me being like, wait, we're finishing a retro with no action. So I was like, you all get a bonus point and pints on me next time we go to the pub, because they jump on it and said, and I said, but why would you guys need actions? Like, I think we've discussed enough, like still playing devil advocates. And all of them were like, no, a retro without meaningful action points is not a good retro. And I was like, I love you guys, you've learned well. So yeah, that's
yeah, to me it resonates a bit with some of the Kanban theory, with the cost of delay. So when you're in a very established company, and some people will have an idea that say, okay, maybe if we change this, it could be good, but there's no real incentive. In the end, that's what Ate, our previous guest, or previous guest was telling us, was that the timing dictates the means. So if you don't have an incentive to change fast, well, probably you're gonna take your time, and if you have an unlimited time, you're gonna take an unlimited time. Whereas usually in startups, it's life or death decision for the company usually. So you want to move fast and to have increments super fast, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't use those increments and create this pressure also on longer term meetings, or when you don't have that pressure, because in the end, it's going to take ages if you don't constrain the flow.
Something I noticed was this companies is that all the changes are client driven. So for example, if I offer something to change, very often it's kind of overlooked and omitted. It's like, who are you? Like, yeah, there is a problem, but we don't really want to see that problem. It doesn't exist, something like that. But if the client says there is a problem and it needs to be fixed, all the management, the engineering managers, the product managers, they all come to you and like, yeah, we have this problem. Even if you talked about this problem for months, when it comes from the client, that's when action starts. And I love that. Like sometimes you kind of prepare the ground, you get rejected, you talk about some problem existing in the company, but they don't want to face it at the moment, but you're preparing the grounds for the client to come and tell them this is an issue, and then the action goes. So for example, one of the things that happened in one of the projects was we were having a product that was very like client facing, and it wasn't properly tested. We didn't have a QA on the team. So we were testing it ourselves. Developers were testing it. Even like a Scrum Master, I was testing it. The CTO was testing it. Whoever was able to, like, just available to test the product would do it. But we didn't have a QA. And then the client comes back to us and it's like, there is bug, there is another bug, there is another bug. And there is like a huge list of bugs, and we are fixing these bugs for a month. And this project is already live. So that kind of need, like when we talked about it, we need a QA, until we got this feedback, like negative feedback from the client, your product is very buggy, this is unacceptable. We had like a really negative feedback, and immediately we started hiring a QA, and we did, and now we have a QA on the team. So I feel like all the changes that are like driven by the client are really fast.
Do you think that's also because basically the client represents basically the kind of the future of your company, because a product with no clients is not a product, it's just, doomed to disappear. So do you think that basically the fact that it's the client saying it, coming with the fact that they are the one paying for that service, they're obviously coming as like first-class citizens, even if you may have this idea, because it was you're not the money bringer, the client is. Do you think that that is the way people see it, and that's the reason they prioritize so highly the client feedback over the ideas that engineer could get? Or
100%. I think client satisfaction plays such a vital role in the software development, and if the client is not satisfied, that's a big driver of change. And very often that's like the biggest input for the company to change, the client.
I think that's referred by the Scrum. So I don't remember if it's in the principles or I don't think it's directly in the Scrum guide, but I think it says that one of the major, one of the major things you can look out to know that your app is good is the client satisfaction. So if your client is happy, most likely your product is doing well. So yeah.
Metric, I think.
Metrics, thank you. That's, yeah. Obvious one, but yeah. So one of the key metrics is to look at the client satisfaction, and if your client is happy, it means that even if there could be a few bugs in your app, overall the majority of our users are experiencing a good UX, and therefore they're happy with your product, so they will buy again or consume it again. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's even an agile principle overall. Like user satisfaction is your main metric.
That's the one I was looking for. Thanks.
So even though the client drives the the change in the company. Sometimes the company also has initiatives inside. I worked in one of the companies that had budget to encourage employees to professional development. In one of the companies, every other week, so every sprint, basically we had 2-week sprints, we had one afternoon for learning and development. So 4 hours every sprint, we would be able to just learn whatever we want. We had access, for example, to LinkedIn Learning, or you could take any other courses. And one of the things that was kind of one of the things that we wanted to encourage in this time is building community of practice and meeting with people from different silos and trying to learn together and share knowledge. I don't know, guys, Julian and Pierre, have you ever encountered any community of practice in your workplace? Do you know much about it?
So I would try to be tempted to say yes, but maybe it's a different concept. So we have the concept of the guild, which basically, so by default, that would be per engineering discipline. So we have one for the QA, one for the backenders, and one for the frontenders. And basically the idea is for them to meet regularly. So we try to do it on a weekly cadence or bi-monthly cadence. And then we get the people together to basically highlight what could be done better. If someone has to showcase or explain something they've done recently that could be leveraged by other engineers in the same discipline, and basically taking further action on, okay, we've had those 3 issues, we've addressed them, what are the next batch of issues we would like to focus on? So I do not know if it's, I guess to some degree it's touching the community of practice, but it might not be for the same reason, because the guild is really meant to introspect what is already there and fix it or make it better, which is not so much on the practice, because it's really much tied to the existing code base. So I think that's the key difference I see there between what I call the guild and what you come up with the communities of practice.
Can I ask you, Pierre, who facilitates these meetings? Because you say it's like there is a cadence. So who schedules these meetings? Who overlooks them? Is it like a company initiative?
Very much, yeah. So it will be basically led by what we call the guild champion, which in our case will be the most senior backender and frontender and QA that are expected to lead. They don't necessarily have to, but the expectation is the more senior of them would naturally lead those conversations. So
actually, I prepared the definition. What is the community of practice? By Etienne Wenger. He says, community of practice are groups of people who share a passion for something that they know how to do and who interact regularly to learn how to do it better. So it kind of fits with what you described as a guild, but I do see a little bit of differences. I think communities of practice can have different purposes. Your purpose is it can just be one of the types that exist. So one purpose is helping communities. So you come with issues that emerge every day. Maybe that's something that you have, and you're working on fixing these issues. So this is one type of community of practice, just to help people in the same kind of role across the company. Another type is best practice communities. So then people gather to develop and disseminate best practices, and then they will probably try to encourage these best practices across the organization. Then there is a purpose with innovation. So this is, maybe you were saying this is different, that we try to create breakthrough ideas, new knowledge, new practices, maybe try some new technology. And the last purpose is knowledge stewarding communities. So this is just a kind of knowledge sharing community. So I think what you mentioned as your guild is a helping community, and it still fits within the description of community of practice.
Is there a difference? Because I think you point to something which is interesting, because obviously that's something that the organization and let's say the engineering department enforce basically to make sure that we constantly introspect the code base, and we basically visit the tech debt list, the tech debt basically backlog that we know of, and we try to deploy it as much as possible. In the idea of this communities of practice, is it the idea that is meant to be a genuine someone pushing for it, or is it still acceptable if that was defined and basically has been set in place by the organization and not by the individual inside of that group?
That's why I asked you who is kind of responsible for setting the meetings, and is there a person overlooking it? The idea of community of practice is autonomy. And this is like the biggest part, is that it's peer to peer. There is no hierarchy. So if like the company like schedules this meeting and it's mandatory, it means it's not working, because like you should want to be there. Like, you know, it's like you're a member of the group and you're proud. For example, you know, I play rugby and I belong to like Benfica club, and I just want to go there, and I want to go go and watch every game of Benfica because I'm a member of the club and I'm a proud member of it. And the same like about community of practice, you're proud to be part of that community and you want to go to those meetings and you don't feel like obliged to do that. So autonomy, it is like a really big part of it. But how do you start it without that initiative from the company? I think that's kind of like a start when the company can schedule these meetings and you like slowly guide to be self-managing. Is the same as Scrum in a way. Like first you have to be there, and then eventually you want someone to take over, but it does need a leader. So community of practice does need because it needs some level of facilitation of this meeting, so that we do have action points after these meetings and we do put this in practice, because we don't want just to talk at the end there is no action point, because then it means it's not a productive meeting.
So there's a company cultural prerequisite in a certain way, where people are safe enough and they also have the time either given by the company or in terms of workload, they are in a place where they can take a regular step back on their day-to-day tasks and actually work on that, collaborate with people. So it's interesting.
I think it definitely fosters a sense of belonging, and professional culture as well, and professional learning. I think all of us strive to learn from the best, and especially if this is a big company and you don't interact with all people in different teams, it is such a great place to come together and discuss any issues that you might have or learn from people from different teams. So I think the investment into this from company side will definitely you will definitely get the return on your investment, because definitely the better company culture, sense of belonging, fostering community, building relationship peer to peer, it definitely will benefit the company overall.
Have you already been involved into setting up communities of practice? And if yes, have you had any challenges in doing so, either people not participating or not being volunteered enough, or from the management side where they say no, it's a waste of time?
We did have two communities of practice. One was Agile and it was role-based. So all the Scrum Masters from all the teams and Agile Delivery Manager and Engineering Manager, we would go together and discuss different challenges that we see across the teams and try to solve it. And it worked really well. But at some point, we ran this community of practice maybe 6 months. And after 6 months, we realized that there is a lot of talking, but not much change. Change is slow, but still in 6 months, you should be able to see some change. So it was benefiting us in terms of knowledge sharing, but it wasn't generating value for our teams respectively. So we kind of put it in a retro format, how can we improve this community of practice to bring more value to the teams, to bring how do we put this in practice, this knowledge sharing. And definitely we try to have more action points and follow up, and we had a backlog in Jira with action points and trying to act on it, and we set also like OKR for Agile quarterly and try to achieve it. So it did work better when there is more focus, when we had like action points in a backlog and we had OKRs and we would inspect it more often. It's like, when you do retro on a retro, like how can I improve the retro? The same what happened with this community of practice. We were happy to share knowledge and there was a lot of knowledge sharing, but at the end it felt like, what is the value for the teams? And another community of practice I helped to set up was like front-end UI across all the teams. And it was a topic-based. So topic-based community of practice means that even if it's not your role, like UI, front-end, then you can still join. And, for example, a full stack or even back-end developer who wants to know more about UI practices. And it worked really well. It was very well purposed by benchmarking, because I think there was some like discrepancy between teams in doing UI for one product, and it did work well, but the challenge was here about leadership. When we were in a community of practice for Agile, as we are all so Agile and everyone knows how to facilitate and everyone is initiative, you can see like this kind of quality of people. It was easy, it was flowing. But then when you take a bunch of developers who are quite often more introverted and don't like to speak up, so then it definitely was slower, and finding someone. At the end, the person who was a leader was like the lead UI, whatever. So because it's kind of, they are already in that position. But I think ideally you would want to pick leaders also from like lower position, because, in Scrum, ideally there is no hierarchy. But at the end, in this organization, the hierarchy always exists. It's kind of like old school, and how do you promote people from like a developer to a developer? You have to put like junior developer, middle developer, senior developer, because then it doesn't work with promotion and status and all that. So then definitely at the end, this community of practice had the leader was the lead UI developer.
Which makes sense kind of in the end, or at least probably if they are already leading, then they also have this leadership and the recognition from the rest of the team. So it's probably easier. But I can also see how, like, once you have a team that is running and you show also what it is, how it should be laid, and how it should be organized, then if that person goes away, probably someone or the team globally is gonna find a way to make it work, because they have seen an example that was working. I make more and more the distinction between leader and manager, and like what is the role, and like the leader follower, depending on the scope, you're gonna be the leader or the follower, or take the tactical lead or the administrative lead.
One of the questions I've got, so obviously, is there a way basically I don't even know if it's something that even exists, but is there a way for someone that is outside of that community of practices, so kind of the same way you would like a Scrum Master to work, which is, yes, the Scrum Master needs to be in the team, but you would like to be as, I don't like to say useless, but that's kind of the idea, is that you want to be as replaceable as possible. Is there a way for someone to basically start a community of practice and just making sure that it runs smoothly and that leads are being put to lead those conversations, even though, like, regardless of the management? Have you ever seen this, where basically someone is still like kind of sanity checking how the community of practices is doing and kind of inferring a bit of ideas for it to go better, kind of the same way you would think as a Scrum Master, where you don't want to come and say, no, that is wrong, you do it this way. You will never do that as a Scrum Master. You will say, guys, have you thought like maybe there is another approach, like what about this or that? Like, you give them like deep, loose direction rather than enforce a decision on them. Is there the same way that you could apply that to communities of practices? So coming back to them and be like, actually guys, naturally, like the most top manager was appointed as the lead, but you think that anyone would like to lead instead, or would someone like to, for the next session, lead instead of that person, and things like that? Could that help basically?
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually like within the description of this community of practice. That's what you expect. That the leadership is changeable. Leader can be assigned every month, every quarter, every 6 months. We don't want the community of practice run for years and have the same leader unless they really wanted to, and the leadership is great. But definitely this is something, I think it takes time and energy, and it's great like if it's a shared responsibility of different people, and it also gives great experience for people who haven't been in leadership roles yet, for them to kind of prove themselves. And actually a lot of companies really value if you step up in a community of practice, because then within this like promotion scale, it gives you definitely like a bonus, like yeah, you did this, you stepped up, and like you performed well and stuff like that. But as a Scrum Master, we were asked from the management team to help communities of practice, of course, especially in the beginning, to set up kind of the best practices for the meetings, and to go out of the meeting with action point, and just like overall to give some feedback and help them to set up it. So definitely we don't want to just, even though the Scrum guide says Scrum Master doesn't have to be present at the dailies, the Scrum teams are self-organized, but you don't just like throw a team in the ocean without like knowing how to swim. You teach them how to swim, and then you kind of like able to let go and stuff like that. The same works with the community of practice.
Cool, thank you.
And dealing with organizational change, setting up communities of practice, or just proposing any changes within the companies, I think you always face rejection. It's just like such a big part of Scrum, being a Scrum Master. Actually, when I met Julian and I just started immediately talking about organizational change, it was because it was such a pain point, especially the day that I had at work. I remember I was just so frustrated. It's just like hitting a wall with your head, or like knocking on the door, and it's closed and it's shut closed. Or sometimes you just open the door a little bit, you think you make some steps, and then somebody just shuts the door. And I was just recently reading this book. It's called Scrum Mastery. I don't know if you have read it, by Geoff Watts. And there was like this quote that I thought, oh my God, this is like my life. And it's like, if life gives you lemons, make lemonade. And that's like about Scrum Master. If you face rejection, don't give up. You just take advantage and regroup, reflect, and do better. And I think it's such a easy thing for a Scrum Master to just give up, because we have to be so proactive. We have to really think long term, what can benefit the team, and see these impediments on our organizational level. But when we try to remove these impediments, that's kind of what is described as our role, impediment remover, then you just face rejection after rejection after rejection. Do you agree with this, that, when life gives you lemons, make a lemonade?
Absolutely. I cannot count the number. At some point, I wanted to be called Cassandra because, so as you know, in the Troy attack, basically Cassandra was a PT, so she could basically tell the future. But as Apollo had spit into her mouth, so she would definitely know the future, but no one would believe her. And you can't imagine how many times I've been in this situation when I've told them exactly as you were saying at the beginning, if we don't do anything on this particular matter, this will happen. And everybody will be like, no, not an issue, no, unlikely to happen. Oh no, trust me, that's my favorite one. Trust me, that won't happen. And then I wait for sometimes a few days, sometimes a few weeks, sometimes a few months, and that exactly happened. And every time I don't take pleasure because it pains me every time, but I take back the moment I say, because I make sure to put it in writing, and then I say to the people, look what you replied to me then, and look what you're asking me now. And basically what has happened is, once I basically take back a message I sent 6 months ago where I was saying we should be careful of this because that will happen, basically being told by the person, no, don't worry, that's not an issue now, we'll sort it later. And then literally 6 months after, being told that this was not great enough and I should have done a better job. And I literally said, I've told you I could, you told me not to, and now you're telling me it's on me. And you cannot imagine the number of times that happened. And as best as I try not to be mad at at the person that basically told me off then, but is coming to me now to fix it, while I told them that this would happen. And I fully agree. Like you need to just be like, okay. And so I don't like to bring those, but I do by saying to the people, look, you rejected me then without much knowledge at all. It was just kind of gut feeling while I was telling you from like the technical point of view, the risk we had, you knowledgeably ignored it, and now we basically have to live with the consequences. So I really feel in what you're saying. Happened way too many times. Yeah.
So what is the way around? What if what shall you do? Like if I go to someone and I say that's gonna end up wrong, but here's what I propose, and the person says, no, don't worry. What would be you guys' advice? Shall I try to influence and understand what the person wants and try and merge what I want into what the person wants? Shall I just give up and later say, oh, well, it's your fault now. It's your time to use extreme ownership and to fix the problem that you've indirectly created because you told me to not fix it? What's the approach?
I think Scrum definitely says there is no blame culture. And I think that's true. We should not, put blame. I told you so. I mean, it is really easy to say so. And, we all have ego. And maybe in your head, you do think I told you so. But I don't think you need to tell them that, I was right. It's obvious to you. And that's good enough. But, the tool that I kind of discovered, that's kind of going to the topic how to actually achieve that organizational change. First of the things I think is build personal connections with people across different departments. And I think that's something that works the best. When you know these people personally, when you know the names of their pets and kids and family, and when you can ask them in coffee break about that, or just their problems, or something personal about them, that really helps. And these personal connections will help you to solve the issues, and they will trust you, because trust building is the biggest thing in organizational change. People have to trust you that you can bring change, and they have to trust you as a person, not even as a professional.
That's a very good point. What I've got for you, so another question. What would you do if basically you're saying to someone, look, I want to make that change and it all sounds good, and they tell you, well, yeah, it sounds really good on paper, but I simply do not believe in it. I don't think what you're saying might be true, or it might be true for others, but someone knows better as always and say, no, in our organization, no way that could work. How, is there any technique you have to basically prove them? Is there any approach you will take to kind of deliver it? So for example, in the Atomic Habit, you've got these, how is it called, these cycles? So you've got the cue, craving, response, and reward. And one of the advice the writer is giving is basically to try to give the reward first, and then you basically are incentivized to go for that change. Is it one of the approach you would recommend to kind of deliver very quickly a little extra or a proof that this is working, and then you use this to basically pull a bigger change that is still in the same vein? Do you have any of those techniques that you use?
I think that data-driven approach is the best, is to try anyway. So you have an idea and you were told no. And I think if it's something you can try without them kind of knowing immediately, you can still try it and see the metrics. Can the data support this approach? Because when it's in theory, then they say no. But when it's actually working, they can't say no.
So basically, your advice is don't ask for permission. Worst case scenario, ask for forgiveness.
Ask for forgiveness, exactly.
Cool. I like it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, music to my ears. Awesome. And okay, last topic, and the last topic I'm so excited about because I'm so deep inside this at the moment. Organizational change. How do you do? Help me. I need guidance. I'm joining a big team, I'm joining a department, and I'm trying to reorganize or at least improve the thing, and it's going to require some quite deep changes. What do I do? How do I do that?
I think that organizational change can't happen by one person. You know, you need to find change agents or change evangelists, as they are called. So find these people across the organization, you know, people who talk about change. For example, you might, in your retro, you might find people who always like say, we need to change this and this, people who are initiative and proactive, and you choose them, you know, as your ambassador. And you can even like create your own like community of practice of like organizational change, you know, and delivery, and go and like create this community with these people and work together to bring change. Because I think as one person, you know, one man team is not a team.
I see that both me and Pierre are taking notes.
100%. I love the idea of the ambassador or helpers, or however you call them, but yeah, especially for organizational change, it is a really, really good idea.
You know, I just wanted to share one example of a quick win about building trust. You know, I was working in less framework, and we had overall retro for like 18 teams, and we had like a representative from each team, and we had like a CTO from like, you know, CTO present. And, you know, I was facilitating that overall retro. And the CTO, we had the rules, you know, the working agreement that you have to raise hand in order to speak, because we were a lot of people, you know, from 18 teams. And the CTO started speaking without having a hand raised. And when he finished speaking, I told, the first thing I said, thank you for sharing, but please make sure that the next time you want to share, raise your hand. And then I passed to the next person. And after the overall retro, everyone went crazy, because I told of the CTO of this company who is like 2,000 employees, who is so like hierarchy and so high ranking. And then the CTO, he gave the most positive feedback to everyone about me, because he was like impressed that you know, I was creating like following the work agreement, and that he was kind of like equal with everyone else. He wasn't like just, he can't just speak up when it's not his turn. And I created an ally within the company by telling him off in the retro, and he was like my biggest ally. When I left the company, he was personally texting me, what can I make to make you stay? And it just like, to me, it was the most ridiculous case of how you can make an ally, you know, by telling them off.
It's so true. Like people, I mean, it's just the truth. People are craving for discipline, and when you show it, people are more than often giving you respect for that. So I was also surprised, and I realized, so there is a fine line. Obviously, you need. I've got no doubt you say it the right way, but there is the right way, being pity with someone by kind of sending them a jab over a meeting, and also, but then you've got like respecting the rules that everybody has agreed to, and then basically you can be the CTO or you can be the new joiner from literally Monday. Everybody, if agreed, shall apply to the same rules, and anyone that enforces those ones will be respected by others. So yeah, it makes me laugh, but I'm really not surprised. And that sounds like a good CTO you had back then for giving you such good feedback. Yeah.
So that reminds me, it's something that it's probably an entire topic. We should have an episode about that. But like, how do you deal with, because what you raised is why the CTO like this is probably because no one dares to do it. And when you're in a place, in a situation of authority or leadership, it is very hard to create the safety to let people give you feedback. And I still haven't cracked that nut completely, but I realized when I had my first company, I hired one guy. So I was the CTO of a 3-people company, and I had one developer. And so we were all friends. Like, we were like drinking together, working together. We were essentially living together. So I was considering that guy as my friend, and he became a very good friend in the end. But it took so long for him to have and kind of to be able to give me honest feedback, like even in code reviews or anything. Like he would not dare to comment any of my pull requests, and every time I would create a pull request, we were two. So if I screw up and if he doesn't review, there's no one checking. So it was his duty to do it. It was not being disrespectful or anything, but it was so hard. It took me so much time for him to do it. It was a good lesson learned. I don't have a magic formula to do it, but it's something to be very mindful when you start to become a leader, a manager, or even like when I was Scrum Master, it was the same thing. Like you say things, you prepare the retro and so on, and sometimes you tell people, well, give me feedback about the retro. Was it a waste of time or not? Did you like it or not? Does it make sense or not? And sometimes it's like when you have like 5 on 5 by everyone at the end of the retro, it means that you've done your job wrong somehow. I wanted to share that. I'm doing a lot of retros at the moment, and I tell people, just tell me, like I'm doing the same retro with multiple groups. So if you don't give me feedback, I'm gonna do the same shitty thing with the other group. So they're gonna be happy. I'm gonna be happy, and you're gonna help the rest of the team by telling me what's wrong. So don't be selfish. Just share.
I'm facing exactly that issue. So I've got my engineer that basically received an invite with someone ranked quite high in the hierarchy of organization, and basically I was telling them, well guys, you see, like the thing you feedback me, which I'm reporting to them, you will be able to let them know immediately. And immediately 2/3 of them came back saying, oh no, but never ever am I gonna say to you never ever am I going to say anything to them that I'll let you know of, because I'm afraid of what they should say. And I said, but at which point in your organization should you be afraid to report something which is a blocker or an impediment to either you fulfilling the best you can your job or helping the organization to take the right decision? And they're like, no, I can't. And then I'm like, but guys, you're not helping me, and you're definitely not helping yourself, because then when I'm raising those issues, knowing that when you have the chance to raise it directly with the kind of the most higher up you can, you don't bring that topic. That means that next time I've got the meeting with them after they directly reach out to you and I bring that topic again, you know what they're gonna tell me? No, I think it's your imagination. No one reported me that issue. And then when I'm trying to tell them, well, but because they're afraid basically to let you know, then they're like, no, of course not. No one is afraid to tell me, right? If it's the right thing, people will generally tell me. And then I'm stuck in that situation where I know what they think, but they will never tell directly the higher ups because they're afraid of the consequences if they were to speak up. But weirdly enough, I genuinely believe that the reason I've been promoted so quickly and so high in the company I'm in, it's specifically because outside of no one else, I was pretty much the only one that was directly coming to them saying that's shit, or like this is bad. Obviously not just saying that shit and leaving the office. I was saying that is actually bad, but I think we could do this to make it better. And they were like, oh, please. But that's the thing. And I keep telling them, like, I think that's one of the, if not the biggest reason I'm in the position I'm in right now in that organization. It's because I was always honest and direct and prone to obviously problem solving first. But I said that I think the core reason I'm in the position I'm in, and they're like, oh yeah, I see, but I don't know you do it. So it's definitely something I would like to dig into to see why is it the case that I am able to do it, but my engineer do not feel legitimate to do so themselves. So I think it's an extremely good topic to dive into. Yeah.
I had the same issue when I joined the company. The CTO wanted feedback from developers on his leadership, and they didn't feel comfortable doing that. But I did anonymous poll. So, like, you know, in Slack, you can use simple poll anonymously, and they felt more encouraged. And I did gather like feedback from all the developers to CTO, and he was quite happy just to know what to work on. So maybe like anonymity in the beginning can help developers like just to step out of their fear zone.
Yeah, that's a really good one. And actually, one of the meetings we're supposed to have with all the engineers, at the very last minute, we managed to turn basically the question system into anonymous. And literally over the 10 minutes where we did that change, we had, I think, 5 more times question that we had as long as basically the poll submission was not anonymous. So yeah, so in a sense I would say that's good to alleviate the issue, but for me, do not resolve the core issue, which is why cannot someone be honest with literally anyone, regardless of hierarchy, in organization, and that's something I will still dig in, because something is still off and I really need to fix it at some point. So yeah.
I think you got yourself an organizational impediment because this is company culture, and it seems like you found like a root issue. We can ask like 5 why, like why they don't want to give feedback because of that, and so on. So now you have to kind of find the ways to remove that impediment on organizational level.
Absolutely, yeah. That shall be my mission from now on.
So before we keep going in all the directions, let's focus and finish this chunky episode. So as usual, the traditions are not the traditions; they are not followed. It doesn't make any sense. Our guest Lydia has come up with some tools to help us and guide us, so enlighten us and give us more tools that we become better Scrum Masters and Agilistes.
Okay, sure. Actually, I love gamification, so all the tools I'm sharing today is all about gamifying your Scrum, or as one book, the Scrum Mastery, it says, sex up your Scrum. You have to make your Scrum more sexy, basically. So games do that, just make your Scrum fun. And, at the daily, I often, like the first 5 minutes of the daily, I often do like riddles or questions, just to start the day with, that coffee cooler kind of way. Mm-hmm. So I'm sharing like one is a yes/no game.net, and it has a lot of riddles, and you just have to ask like questions, and I can only answer yes or no. Most of the stories are a bit dark. For example, there is a murder and you have to find out how it happened, but it's really fun, and the people engage with that. The second tool is actually retrospectives. I really like the website, the Virtual Agile Coach, Co.uk, and he is sharing a lot of free templates. I don't repeat the same retro twice, just as you were saying, Julian, before. It's like you have to change. You have to know, like, is it working? Is it not working? You can't do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. So I definitely love having like fun retro formats. We can have like I know that the team loves Star Wars, so we had like Star Wars retro. Then we had like haunted house retro, and just like this website has a lot of cool templates that I use. Then another one is question, like ice-breaking questions. I like to start all the meetings with like ice-breaking questions. So I use Parable. They have like resources, like free ice-breaking questions, and they're quite good. And the same about the website called teambuilding.com. They also have like lots of different, like 100 fun questions, 300 questions on Christmas and stuff like that. So you can always choose a question to ask the team and break the ice. So these are some fun resources to gamify your Scrum.
Awesome. And of course, you will find all the links in the notes of the episode. Yeah, I love it. Like, I didn't know this website, the agilistcoach.co.uk, with all the retrospective. I just checked it out. It's amazing.
It is absolutely amazing.
And it's funny because when you were saying like you have to make it a little bit funny, it immediately brought back to my memory when I was a Scrum Master, and I would always do a different retro, and it's something that people would tell me quite often as a compliment, that they liked it because they never knew what to expect from the retro. It was also an opportunity for me to start thinking a little bit ahead. Okay, so what do I see, what I foresee are going to be the topics, and what game do I want to use to bring them to uncover this specific issue. And I remember having at Arthos with Pierre having prepared some Star Wars retros, Lord of the Ring retros, to try and share a bit the Scrum values and introduce people to agile methodologies. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think the Lord of the Ring was one of my favorite. How the fuck would you take the hobbits to Isengard? That was definitely a good one.
Oh yeah, lots of good memories. Cool. It is now time to conclude this show. I hope you enjoyed it. Lydia, thank you so much for joining us and for enlightening us. Really, I've taken a whole lot of notes, and I saw Pierre doing so as well, and I'm probably going to keep taking notes when I mix the episode.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Lydia, for your time. That was very enlightening. So yeah, I'm sure somehow we'll speak again. So yeah.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here.
So before the end, before closing the episode, can you tell the crowd where to find you on the internet?
Yes, absolutely. I think the best way is just to follow on LinkedIn, and it's simple Lydia Demchenko, and you will probably not find many Lydia Demchenko who is a Scrum Master from Ukraine, so quite easy.
All right. Thank you very much, Pierre.
The usual, no, my website is online. So yeah, so LinkedIn, definitely. I do have my website back online, so pierre.ferreferrand.fr, and the pub still. Summer is coming back at some point, so I will be more in the pubs in the upcoming days.
Can't wait to go to London to go to the pub.
Please, it's been a while.
Oh yeah. On my side, julian.dra.fr as usual. You can find my book on Amazon, How I Plan My Wedding with Scrum. And if you speak French, you can hear me also talking about day life improvements in the Real Life podcast. If you liked our episode with Ate, I talk a little bit more about the seminar that I've done with him, the kind of military seminar thingy. So if you want to hear a little bit more about that, maybe tune on Real Life and let me know. Thanks for having listened to Agilistes. We hope you enjoyed the show and you learned something. If you did, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or any other platform. If you are listening to us on LinkedIn, or if you discovered us on LinkedIn, or if you know where the post is, please go and leave us a comment, interact with the community. And finally, if you want to participate in Agilistes and come share with us, please send us a message. We'll be very happy to welcome you, even if you don't speak French. In the meantime, we'll see you in about a month to keep going our discussions about agility, mostly in French. Bye-bye, Lydia, and bye, Pierre.
Thanks a lot, Lydia. See you, Julian.
Thank you. Bye-bye.